Either way, I think this is a great example of what the walled garden approach many people want his team to adopt can result in. Here we go again, and to be completely honest, I was fully expecting this to happen at some point, but let's recap for those not in the know. Earlier this year, an anticipated Japanese ecchi RPG by the name of Omega Labyrinth Z was actually slated for a Western release localized by P-Cube, but ended up being cancelled, and while they were rather tight-lipped about the reasoning for this, one fact was clear: it was Sony's call. For one reason or another, Sony had decided that such a fanservice-y heavy title with plenty of sex jokes, minigames, and adult mechanics was not welcome on their service. Such a shame too, as almost all the work for the localization had already been done, effectively slamming the door in P-Cube's face right as they tried to walk into Sony's building. Fast forward to now, and lo and behold, Marvelous Games' latest Senran Kagura title, Burst Renewal, is now in Sony's crosshairs. What for, you might ask? Well, apparently the quote-unquote intimacy mode featured in many of the franchise's titles are now too problematic for Sony's marketplace. Luckily enough, the game is not entirely cancelled. I'm pretty sure there would be riots in the street if that was the case. But instead of cancelling the PlayStation release altogether, XSeed Games announced in a blog post that they are removing said intimacy mode to comply with Sony's will. Also, as a side note, I genuinely feel bad for them, seeing the QA question on the bottom being, "Can I remove my pre-order?" Now, despite loving me some fan service, I have never really cared for the mode, and you can see that in my reviews of both Estful Versus and Peach Beat Splash, and how I just kinda glanced over it. I had never been against the inclusion though, because if you like that kind of stuff, well, have at it, Hoss. Sony sadly has a different opinion, and when asked why this was only happening now despite the feature being present in other Senran Kagura titles still being sold on Sony's marketplace, the localization producer at XSeed Games, Tom Lipschultz, hope I got that right, said that this was a new policy, which I guess started around the time of the P-Cube debacle. Do note that this localization producer did not work on this specific Senran Kagura title, and has since penned a tweet saying that his statements are his own and not official XSeed Games statements, something I see other outlets omitting. This is how you get a man in trouble with his job, guys, not cool. It's kind of funny that the PlayStation 4 ended up being the first console to push censorship onto this franchise, since the series started out on the Nintendo 3DS. And despite Nintendo's tendency to censor many of its first-party titles, just look into Xenoblade Chronicles, it still allowed the title Senran Kagura Reflections for the Switch to be localized in the West, and that game is, from what I've seen, basically the intimacy mode on steroids, powered by the glorious HD Rumble. Another thing kinda funny is XSeed Games' announcement of the change. Now, the first statement was the standard, just telling everyone what is going on and all that, but the second was unintentionally hilarious. "We respect the wishes of the platform holder." And if you are feeling a bit of deja vu from that tweet, that is because a similar line was fitted into P-Cube's response to their game getting blocked by Sony in the West. A tweet I can no longer find put it best, saying, "We respect the wishes of the platform holder" is apparently code for something. But enough of the funny, back to the serious. Now, unlike Omega Labyrinth Z, this game was not only going to be on the PlayStation 4, it is also being released on PC through Steam. You know, that service currently going through its own little mini sexual revolution. And it goes without saying that the game will be unaltered there, so chalk yet another W for the PC market. Probably going to get hate for that comment. A question I did see some people bring up was why not just basically boycott Sony and cancel the PS4 release of the title, and the localization producer pointed out that doing something like that would do more damage to the creators of Senran Kagura than it could ever possibly do to Sony. People have been attacking XSeed over this situation, but I think most of that energy should be focused on Sony for being the primary cause of this censorship. With that said, some of that energy should still be used to watch XSeed's actions, as within Tom's tweets, he does point out how the lack of censorship within Senran Kagura is less of a concern with XSeed Games, and even saying that in regards to the company's localization of the franchise, gameplay has been on the chopping block before, even including an ominous "more times than you know." And Senran Kagura has had a tiny bit of censorship applied in every title in the West in the form of the characters' ages, which I remember hearing had been debated over between either aging them up or removing the ages altogether, with removing them winning out in the end. And that is why you don't see the characters' ages within the game in the Western version. And speaking of ages, That is really where the situation just devolves into a shouting match between people defending Sony's actions and those condemning them. Those already knowledgeable about the situation have already seen this, but here's a snapshot of Eurogamer's coverage of this, calling the mode a molesting underage girls mode. This is disingenuous at best, since while technically correct, it is equally correct to call Fortnite a murder simulator, and I chose Fortnite specifically because, much like Fortnite, Senran Kagura is not realistic. It is cartoonish and over the top, even though that shouldn't matter when talking about fiction. This is the exact slandering that haunts gaming, but I guess it's fine when it comes to something you don't like, and even more fine when you can tweet out an article with your clickbait headline. But with all that said, I think one particular comment, surprisingly within Eurogamer itself, puts everything in perspective within regards to moral conflict with fictional characters. I understand the grossness of the subject here, but it raises a more general question. Do we view the game characters as representations of actual human beings, or are they just digital icons? If it is the former, then we are committing mass murder each time we play a shooter, and those saying violence in video games affects children are right, because it teaches you how to kill people and feel good about it. If it is the latter, they are not depictions of human beings, and the games in question are innocent and should be allowed. That is one of the best arguments I've heard to date dealing with these topics in gaming, since it seems that the gaming press really wants their cake and eat it too in regards to how video games affect people. My personal stance doesn't get all that psychological though. I simply know that it is safer to allow a fictional outlet for people, so real people made out of, skin, flesh, and bone don't get hurt. Some groups feel differently though, and notice I'm saying some groups, not singling out quote-unquote SJWs, even though I do cringe at the knowledge that Sony's gaming division is located in California, fun fact. Here's the cold truth though. Fan service, anime, video games. They are constantly under attack from both sides, left and right, for the craziest of reasons, such as the entire Steam debacle being launched by a right-wing Christian organization. That seems so long ago now with Steam's current direction. But to them both, my response will always be the same.
Take it easy, it's just a drawing.
But that's where we are currently right now. Sony has forced censorship on XSeed games, the game is delayed a bit so those changes can be made. Oh, and before I forget, the delay is also applied to the Steam version despite not receiving any alterations, so that's a thing. And Sony, a company that just a few years back was hailed as the bastion of niche Japanese games, has thrown that title to the wind, allowing the Switch and the PC market to pick up the slack. Honestly, I don't know what Xbox One X is doing right now, but at least they're not walking into rakes like PlayStation is. And that's what I really want to leave this video on, Sony. Because like I said last time this happened, this walled garden crap is really shitting on their brand. Sony's NA branch was supposed to be the bridge between the Eastern and Western markets, but nowadays it seems they only want to give us Western consumers products tailored to the West, maybe because they have their own political biases, or maybe just to try in vain to avoid outcry from people who can't hear the music in Devil May Cry. But do note, if I wanted Western games, I'd buy a fucking Xbox. But leave in the comment section your thoughts. Last time someone criticized my idea that PC was a safe haven to this sort of game, pointing out that PC is where Aerogay is, so why play a sexy game that doesn't go all the way, all the way through? And to that, all I can say is that kinda makes no sense, because that's like saying why play Soul Calibur because Tekken exists. Similar games, but they appeal to different groups and all have their own strengths to make people want to play them. Either way, I do read all the comments, even if I don't reply to them, so let me know your thoughts. Maybe donate to my Patreon to help the news-based content become more frequent, check out some of my other videos for reviews and gameplay, and I will see you guys next time. Peace!